We're looking at multiple days of severe weather with a very active jet stream. First, we have 3 days of severe weather currently. We have an enhanced risk today, enhanced risk tomorrow, and a slight risk on Saturday. You can see how active our jet stream is with a very strong trough right now. That is dipping down into the classic tornado alley areas like Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas areas. Even Iowa is included in this risk. Some of the Midwest and the Ohio Valley areas are expecting severe weather on Saturday. There's a slight risk in areas like eastern Ohio and PA, Pennsylvania, and also in Texas. So there's something to watch there. If we go even more ahead in time, we start to see around the 10th. We have another risk zone. We have a slight risk on day 6. See how active the jet stream is on the 10th to 11th area time frame, where we have a low coming off the Pacific, and this will be bringing most likely a lot of moisture, and it will help to push and initiate storms. I'll break down what we can expect the next few days with severe weather. So let's get started now. First, we're going to start with our Storm Prediction Center, or SPC, outlooks. So today we have enhanced risk. That is a 3 out of 5 risk for severe weather. That is for areas in northwestern Texas and in western Oklahoma. We also have a slight risk that stretches up into southern Kansas, down into areas in northern Texas, and a long marginal risk that stretches all the way up into areas in Iowa, starting in South Texas. We have a 5% tornado risk, but we have a intensity level 1, or SIG 1. That is a new thing that SPC came out with. Basically, that means we could see up to EF2 plus potential for tornadoes in that area with that pattern on it. That 5%, we could see a couple of tornadoes in it. That green, we could see a tornado or two. And here is our wind risk, our damaging wind risk. And that we have another intensity level 1. And that means that we could see up to 74 mile per hour plus wind gusts in that area where that pattern is. That yellow area is where we can expect the strongest damaging wind areas. So that would be in southern Kansas, central Oklahoma, and in far northwestern Texas. We also have this enhanced risk is mainly driven by hail. We're expecting a lot of hailers because we are expecting a lot of supercells today. That could also make the tornado potential more. But we have a 30% hail risk today that is also intensity level 1. So that could mean 2 inches or more diameter hail in that area. The pink area, we could expect the reddish pink area, that is where we could expect the the biggest hail zones. The yellow area, we could expect the second biggest. In the 5% area, it's not 100% you're going to see hail, but it's still a possibility. There are still conditions for hail in that 5% area. Let's take a look at our day 2 outlook, so our outlook for Friday. Here's our outlook for Friday. This is a much more big risk zone. It's also way more concerning because this event we are expecting a lot more favorable conditions and more thermodynamics to actually help these storms to be stronger and more severe. We're expecting more tornadoes, maybe even stronger tornadoes. But we have enhanced risk. This stretches all the way into areas like northern Missouri, western Missouri, Oklahoma, central and eastern Oklahoma areas, eastern Kansas, some of southeastern Nebraska. We also have a slight risk that is a 2 to 5 risk, all the way down and all the way to areas in Illinois, some of far southern Wisconsin, and Iowa. Is even the slight risk stretching all the way from central Oklahoma, central Texas, all the way to areas in southern Wisconsin. That marginal risk is where we could see marginal severe weather, meaning going to be heavy rain, maybe damaging winds, maybe tiny small hailstones. Now, this risk is driven by tornado threat. We're expecting a lot of supercells possibly. We do have a strong cap that may try to reduce the amount of storms we get, but we should be able to get at least a couple of tornadoes for sure, I think. If storms have convection, even if the supercells don't do anything, we are also expecting a QoCS line to form, and if the supercells don't do anything, the QoCS line will for sure at least have a couple of tornadoes most likely. But we have a SIG 1 and intensity level 1 on a 10% tornado risk. We have not had a 10% tornado risk in a very long time. This risk then right here was our first day 4 enhanced risk that we've had in 250 plus days, when it was a day 4. But that 10%, we could see a couple of tornadoes. Sorry, refresh. We could see a couple of tornadoes, possibly even some violent ones. That is worded by the SPC, so that is something to watch for. I'll be breaking that down once we get to our models section of this video, though. But if we go to our wind, we have a 30% risk for damaging wind. Again, just like before, that could mean it is intensity level 1. We could see 74 mph winds or higher in that yellow pink area where that pattern is. And we could see 50 to 70 mph wind gusts in any of these areas. It's just that yellow and pink area have a higher chance at seeing stronger winds. If we go to our hail risk, we also have a 30% hail risk. As again, I said we are expecting a lot of supercells today and tomorrow, and that can cause us to have a lot more hail. But supercells are the main hail producers, but also they are the main tornado producers, which makes this event kind of concerning. That's why I am watching this very closely. I most likely will be streaming today and tomorrow once storms fire. Maybe even Saturday. Not for sure yet on Saturday, but it is possible if we get a strong enough line and severe weather coverage is needed. But again, we do have intensity level 1. That means 2+ inches of hail is possible in that area with a pattern on it like that. Pattern you see in the bottom right of your screen. You can see where that intensity level is. But let's go take a look at our day 3. So here is our day 3 severe weather outlook. We have a slight risk in areas in eastern Ohio, northeastern Kentucky, western West Virginia, areas in Pennsylvania, even as far western New York, and down into areas like far southwest Texas, and even in areas in central west Louisiana. Here's our probabilistic. We have 15%. No intensity levels on these storms yet, as of now. We're not expecting anything too crazy. We are expecting a large QLCS line with some tiny supercells that could develop in areas in like Ohio. We could see some hailers. Not much of a tornado risk though, but something still to watch. And then we have our day 6 flight risk. This is on the 10th. This is less certainty. I'm not going to go too much into this. I will show it a little bit on the models. I'm not going to go too much into it. We have a decent severe weather event. Models have started to downtrend this though, so don't take this too seriously as of now. But we do have a 15% chance, 15% risk for severe weather, which is a 2 out of 5 slight risk basically, for areas in central and northern Texas, all the way to areas into central and southern Missouri, and even western and northwestern Arkansas could get some severe weather on day 6. According to the SPC. That's the only risk we have past 3 days. So now let's go take a look at what our models are showing. Here's what the ARRR is, our main short-range model. This model isn't convecting, doesn't have as much convection, so as much precipitation actually forming on Friday. But sometimes the ARRR can mess up with that, but other models do. We're kind of having model wars right now. We have some models think that we will have a big day on Friday. Some models think that we'll have too strong of a cap and we'll mainly just have a QLCS line. The ARRR is one of the models that thinks we'll have too strong of a cap to break fully, but we still will get a couple of tornadoes from the QLCS line and some discrete supercells. But let's look at today first. So as we go throughout the day, we see some morning showers in areas like Oklahoma and Texas. And then as we go through into the nighttime hours, this is about 6 or 7 p.m. on today, and you see some supercells start to form on the Texas and Oklahoma border, and also in far northwestern Texas. We see some supercells even down into northern Texas and western Texas areas. You start to see some supercells start to develop over here. These like little balls of convection you see here, that is supercells on the ARRR model. You can see they start to kind of collide, get stronger. This one would be a kind of a concern right here. We do have a very favorable condition right here in Oklahoma with high moisture, high cape, so high storm energy. So we are definitely watching this very closely. Showing a very strong storm here. Not really a supercell at this point. Kind of becomes a line of storms, But as the storms first start to develop, that is when we have the biggest tornado risk. We could still see a tornado embedded in this line right here, this little line of storms. The storms kind of die overnight as we go throughout into Friday morning. We still have some more precipitation, but nothing too crazy going into areas like Iowa and northern Illinois. Then as we go through Friday, around the same time frame, around 5 to 7 p.m. is when storms are expected to initiate. So some cells start to pop up down here on the ARRR and up here in Iowa. And we start to see some discrete cells over here in Missouri and that enhanced risk. And then we see that it turns into a line of storms. So ARRR isn't showing a whole bunch of supercells. It shows a lot of discrete cells, but doesn't show them actually intensifying into supercells. Kind of keeps the environment kind of capped. So we'll have to see what outcome actually happens. But as of now, the ARRR is kind of keeping it more capped. Some discrete supercells could produce tornadoes, but it's mainly looking like it's going to be a wind and hail risk on the ARRR model. Kind of shows a very messy setup altogether with two QLCS lines right here. See one line right here and one line up here, and one trying to develop down in Texas. That's something to watch. If the ARRR is right, that could be a big wind event, but it could also have discrete tornadoes inside of it. Let's take a look at our cape on the ARRR. That's basically what our storms are using as energy. Here is our surface-based cape. We can see today we have very high cape, about 2,400 cape. It's so hot down there right now because we have a lot of surface heating throughout the day. It starts to die out throughout the night, but there is still a lot of cape. This is the time that storms are expected to initiate. We see a lot of cape on the border right here of Oklahoma and Texas, and even down into central northern Texas areas with 2,500, 2,000 to 2,800, 2,900 cape, even probably some areas of discrete 3,000 cape in some tiny spots. So definitely something to watch today. We have a lot of storm energy for these. So these storms have a lot of energy to rely on. If we look into Friday, we have even more energy. We're looking at areas of 3,300 in northern Oklahoma areas. You can see we're kind of, the ARRR kind of has a cap right here. We have a big cap expected. So we'll have to see what actually happens. I'll look at a couple models in this video though. I'll look at the ARRR, the Rufus, and the NAM model. And then the GFS to show that day 6 outlook. But we definitely have decent cape the next 2 days. Well, not decent cape. We have more than enough cape to produce severe storms. Let's take a look at our bulk shear. Here is our bulk shear. We definitely have a lot of shear. That's with the jet stream that comes with the jet stream. All this bulk shear. See when the storms are supposed to initiate. We have very strong bulk shear right here. This bulk shear kind of helps with storms to rotate. That is wind direction change as we go higher in the atmosphere, and that can help to develop mesocyclone, which is super like the rotating part of supercells. So we have very strong cape the next 2 days, and we have very strong cape on Saturday too, because of that strong 500 millibar jet stream I showed at the beginning of the video. There's one more thing I want to take a look at, and then I'll move on to the Rufus model, which shows all the way into Saturday in the NAM. I'm looking at the significant tornado perimeter. Here is our significant tornado perimeter. On the ARRR, we definitely see some high numbers going into 2, some areas in the discrete, maybe going up into 3 in some tiny areas today. You can see areas going into 2.7, 2.8. Definitely high significant tornado perimeter. This basically takes in multiple different parameters and thermos to kind of say where the most favorable environment is for significant tornadoes. Like we'd see a 3 in southern Kansas. We do have that 5% tornado risk. And as we go through it tomorrow, so I said we do have a very favorable environment tomorrow, but we have a very strong cap. So it depends on if storms can break that cap. You can see very strong very strong significant tornado perimeter here. A lot of 2s, 3s, even going into almost 4 in some areas. In areas like northwestern Missouri, central Oklahoma, almost all of Oklahoma, central eastern Oklahoma, and northern Oklahoma is in an area of 1 to 3 significant tornado perimeter, which is very high significant tornado perimeter number. But if we pull a sounding, like you saw on the ARRR on that reflectivity, we don't see a whole lot of convection with that. Convection basically the storm's actually starting up. Convection is just the storms basically. And we are not saying that because the ARRR is thinking that we have too strong of a cap to break. But it is still possible to break the cap. So now let's go take a look at what the Rufus is showing for today and tomorrow, and also for Saturday. Here's what the Rufus model is showing for today and on Friday and Saturday. So it should actually show a bigger event today with a lot stronger and bigger storms and more supercells. You can see the the Rufus shows multiple 4 supercells start to fire down here in northwestern Texas, and then go and collide into one big supercell. This could definitely cause a lot of issues today. That is why we had that 5% tornado risk, and we're expecting a couple of tornadoes to be possible today. Maybe even a violent one is possible. So you can see very strong storms expected today. Definitely be weather aware if you are in any of the risk zones I showed in that outlook. I will put timestamps in the video so you can go back or go forward. But if we go into Friday, you see storms start to develop. Unlike the ARRR shows actual supercells developing in areas in Oklahoma in that very favorable environment. Still has a little bit of a cap to stop some storms from developing. But you can see we have the Rufus kind of does sometimes overreact. It is an experimental model, the Rufus, the RRFSA, called Rufus for short. But it kind of does sometimes overreact with just supercell galore everywhere. See supercells everywhere here, but that is definitely a possibility. And that would be the worst case scenario, most likely, is that we have supercells just everywhere, all the way in Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri. That would be most likely the worst case scenario. And then the smooth area, so we can see the Ohio Valley area for that QLCS line. Here's that QLCS line we were expecting. If we go ahead, see that rain throughout the days. And if we go into Saturday, into late Friday, we start to see storms start to kind of become into a line in some areas. The newest Rufus is kind of showing these systems more south, but this would be a big risk for areas like Arkansas, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky. And we also see, if we see some supercells start to develop in areas like Ohio. Also, we see a lot of supercells developing central eastern Ohio areas, areas in Pennsylvania getting some supercells. So we're looking at a very big line the roof is showing a very big strong line of storms all the way down in the south and central U.S. areas in Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley areas. And then it's showing some discrete supercells and storms start to fire in areas like Indiana, Ohio, some of Illinois, some going into areas like West Virginia, and also in areas like Pennsylvania. So definitely something to watch. But let's take a look at what our Rufus model is showing for our significant tornado perimeters the next few days. Here are our significant tornado perimeters on the Rufus model the next few days. We see some very high, I kind of stretched it out a little bit so it shows the whole United States. So if you can just read the number, you can't see that good on video probably. But we can see some areas in 3. So the Rufus does have today, as like I showed you guys, it has way more supercells in a way more favorable environment for storms today. So if we go ahead, we start to see, if we go ahead into Friday, we see a lot of supercell, we see 4 significant tornado perimeter. That is a very, very favorable environment for tornadoes if we can break the cap. If the cap can fully break, we have a very favorable environment for tornadoes in northwestern Oklahoma, southern Kansas, northern Oklahoma areas. If you watch that very closely, and then we can see even going into Saturday night, we see some supercell composite. Nothing too crazy, but we see a line of 0.5 to 1 supercell composite stretching all the way across into areas like Kentucky, and even in Ohio and Pennsylvania could see some areas where we could expect possibly a couple of tornadoes. I think a couple of tornadoes are possible. A couple of weak tornadoes, spin up tornadoes are possible on Saturday. But our main risk will be on Friday and today. Let's take a look at our cape. Here's our surface-based cape for today. As we go throughout the night. Let me go back again. So it looks like the Rufus has a little bit less cape, not as much cape stretching into areas like Kansas today, which makes sense for the Rufus doesn't have as much storms in areas like southern Kansas or Missouri areas. We still do have 2,800 cape to 1800 to 2800 Cape in most areas where we are seeing storms to fire, which is why the roof model does have a very high significant tornado perimeter numbers. Look into Friday, we see 2000 Cape in most areas and where we are seeing storms fire. And even some of the areas outside those main areas are in 1200 to 2000 Cape, and that is definitely enough for severe storms. We only need about 1000 Cape to actually have severe storm, and we definitely have that. And we see if we go into Saturday, we see a lot of three areas of Cape in the far southern area in the U.S., and we see about 600 to 1000 Cape in much of the area like Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Some of West Virginia could see up to 1000 Cape in some isolated areas. We definitely have more Cape down south. That just makes more sense because that's near the Gulf. There's more moisture there. Helps give the storms more energy, basically. Let's take a look at our bulk shear on the Rufus. Here's our bulk shear on the Rufus model. We actually don't see too much shear today. So the Rufus kind of is downplaying how much shear we're supposed to see. I don't believe the Rufus on that shear that much, though. There's nowhere we're going to get. I do not know what the Rufus is on. Again, this is an experimental model, guys, so don't take this too seriously on the Rufus. It is a model still, but it is experimental as of now. But it only has about 20 bulk shear, which is not even enough for a good supercell. We'll have to see. It's popping up a whole bunch of supercells, but it doesn't have good bulk shear, which is weird. Maybe we have normal deep layer shear. That's what it is. But we still see some decent numbers in isolated areas with those supercells. Definitely still be able to still watch that. And then Friday, we still do see some high Cape. Bulk shear. Nothing too crazy though. Rufus doesn't have a whole lot of bulk shear, which probably means it has deep layer shear. We definitely see a lot of shear in areas like Ohio, Indiana, Illinois on Saturday though. So definitely something to watch. We're gonna look at one more model, and that is a NAM model, or sorry, two more models. We're gonna look at the NAM and then the GFS for day 6. Here's our NAM model. We're not going to show the reflectivity on the NAM because it kind of just makes everything a linear QLCS line, so a line of storms all the time. But it does show a lot of Cape today on the latest NAM model, showing areas going into 2700, 2200, 2800, into areas where we're expecting a lot of supercells today. That's something to watch over today. And as we go into Friday, the NAM model kind of downplays this event with only about 2000 Cape, still enough for severe storms, but only about 1000 to 2000 Cape, so kind of like the bare minimum for severe storms. And Saturday still shows decent Cape in some areas like Ohio with 1000 Cape in southern Ohio and eastern Ohio areas. Areas like Louisiana and far southern Texas where that slight risk is, that is where we have the most Cape, the most storm energy. That makes sense why there is a slight risk there. Let's take a look at our significant tornado, our bulk shear first, and then our significant tornado perimeter. So here's our bulk shear on the NAM model. Kind of shows a little bit more shear than the Rufus today. And then Friday and Saturday shows a lot more shear with that strong jet stream. 80 knots of bulk shear. That is a lot of shear, definitely enough shear. Even if we don't have enough Cape for the line of storms, this bulk shear kind of can help our storms be shear driven and can even cause them to have severe weather even without a lot of Cape to work with. So definitely going to be watching that very closely the next 2 days. That is our main events. We'll look at our. We see some decent numbers. Nothing too crazy today on the NAM model. Yeah, the NAM is not the best model, honestly. It's kind of sometimes down. Sometimes it either overreacts or underreacts to storms. But shows Candace being the main risk today on the NAM model. Shows Friday going up to 3 Sigtor. Nothing, so still some high significant tornado perimeter numbers. Definitely something to still watch. Even if the NAM model isn't the best, still does kind of agree with a very favorable environment today and tomorrow for severe weather. We're going to look at one other model, and that is the GFS. We're going to see what the GFS model is showing for the tents. To do that, we're going to look at our supercell composite, and our surface-based Cape. So our storm energy again after this. So we go into the tents. The GFS doesn't show a whole bunch happening on the tents, but so does show some areas in Texas with 4 or 5 supercell composites. So nothing too crazy. It's definitely something to watch. on the GFS. Let's look at our surface-based cape. Here's our surface-based cape on the 10th. Again, the GFS doesn't show it that good. The Euro model kind of agrees more. I'm not going to go too much into this model. I'm just going to show the GFS for now, just because the system is still about a week out, 6 days out. So nothing too crazy to be concerned about yet. Just be weather aware, but definitely today and tomorrow and Saturday, definitely be weather aware if you are in areas like Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana. Basically, a lot of the Ohio Valley and classic Snow Valley area. That's going to be all for today's forecast. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you guys do like and subscribe for more forecasts. I most likely will start in the next couple days. Thank you so much for watching.